Welcome back to the channel. My name is Mark. I hope you all are having a wonderful day or evening. In today's story, OP found out his wife cheated on him with a guy she met at a bar and now claims that she wants to have kids with him. Now let's get into today's story to find out what happened. I, 37 male, have been in a relationship with my wife, 35, for 15 years and married for 5. We have 2 children, ages 3 and 1. On December 13th of last year, she met the AP at a bar about 2 blocks from our apartment. She had been in a state of depression for a while preceding this and was self-medicating with heavy alcohol abuse. She had gone to the bar for a drink and met the AP. They struck up a conversation. He listened to her troubles and they exchanged phone numbers. He gave her some weed. She was too drunk and / or high to drive the 2 blocks back to our apartment. So she called me. I had been calling her fairly frantically all evening as she had failed to pick up the kids from daycare and had effectively vanished. She was so far gone on the phone that she had to ask the AP standing next to her, as she called me, where she was so I could come and pick her up. When she finally sobered up, she simply said that the AP had been a friendly person who had been concerned when she had drunk too much. The day she received some texts from him, including a couple telling her that she should come to his apartment and that he was waiting for her. He also began making calls to her phone. After a few ring-throughs with her agreements, I answered the phone myself and told him that she was married and that he should F off. He said that he was just calling to make sure she was okay, since she had been in a bad way the day before. I gave my wife the phone and she told him that she was okay and to stop calling. For the next week, I thought that was the end of things with him. On December 20th, we went with the kids to visit my in-laws for Christmas. On the 23rd, D-Day 2, my wife's parents went out to finish Christmas shopping. While they were out, I heard my wife talking to someone on the phone. My 3-year-old son, our 3-year-old, was in the room with her and she was having my son say hi to whoever she was speaking to. I asked her who it was and she said she was talking to one of her friends from grad school. Something about the situation did not sit quite right with me, so when she went to put our son to bed, I found her phone and sure enough, the call had been to the AP. And there was a history of texts from the 13th to that evening, with some obvious gaps where messages had been deleted. The most recent conversation was about our kids, including some photos of our children, and ended with the AP stating how much he would like my wife to have his babies. I confronted her immediately and she burst into tears and asked me to please not leave her. What has followed has been 2 months of lies and false promises to end things. She has told me that she wants to be reconciled and then gone right back to the affair. She pays verbal homage to go marital counseling, but only as a tactic to delay and to continue with. She has shocked me with the casualness with which she can lie to my face. She has continued her behavior up until this very evening as I write this. She is with him at his house right now. This week, I'm going to be talking to a lawyer and initiating a divorce. It's astounding how quickly and how thoughtlessly she has discarded our lives together. I'm ashamed to have spent so much of my life with her. If it weren't for our kids, who I love with all my heart, I would count all 15 years with her as an utter waste. OP, I'm so sorry. You're in the middle of all this right now. Please keep in mind one thing. You can be a super dad with or without your wife. You continue to be there for your kids and your connection will grow stronger. As for the AP and your wife, let them live their fake fantasy. You are better than them both combined. The insincerity of their relationship will come to haunt them. She will come back, but you will be gone, living and being a great dad. Good luck. Now let's get into today's second story. I've been married to my wife for a little over a year now. We've been together for almost 13 years. We have 2 children, ages 2 and 6, and we have a problem. My wife always seemed to be a happy woman, the life of the party, and a social beast. But she changed in the past few years. Her first pregnancy was really tough on her, and while giving birth to her oldest daughter, she developed a trauma. She got into therapy again and slowly rebuilt her positive flow, or so I thought. During these times, I noticed that she stopped talking to me about her negative thoughts if I admitted how much she hurt me with them. We had a second girl, and this time she did feel it for about 3 or 4 months. Then the shame hit her that she hadn't felt this with our oldest girl. And in secret, she started having dark thoughts again. It turned out that her thoughts of suicide went from unwanted to welcome. We got married at the end of 2016, And it turns out that her feelings during that period were darker than ever. Before our marriage, she had met a man, a tattoo artist who was 15 years older and was working on her tattoo. Something to remember her dark period and her strength, and was married himself. They started an affair 2 weeks after our marriage and met in secret until I caught her this January. While digging through her lies, as she didn't want to tell me the whole truth, I found out that she had been in contact with 3 other men. She had sexed with 2 but only had deep and meaningful conversations with the last one. The weeks after that, she confessed to me that she had been very suicidal, and that her meetings with that man felt like she could escape her reality and live in a bubble for a few hours. Nobody but me knew of her dark thoughts, and she had hidden her darkest drives even from me. We had a ton of arguments, but she told me she didn't want to lose me, and that she loved me, that she made a mistake, and that she was afraid that she was broken beyond repair. She had been seeing a therapist because she was suffering from burnout, but she had only told her 10% of the truth. When I demanded she tell the therapist everything, they told her that the case was too hard for her kind of therapy. At the time, the verdict was still a postnatal depression that devolved into PTSD. A few weeks ago, she started with another clinic, and they quickly stated that the verdict was wrong. PTSD didn't fit because she didn't have trauma, and because her thoughts were welcome and not intrusive. She felt at peace when browsing online for ways to kill herself, or deciding what music should be played at her funeral. Currently, the verdict is dysthymic depression, and she'll be starting treatment soon. But now for the hard part. We spent 1.5 months trying to get past the fact that she had an affair, and I was slowly giving it a place that didn't cause pain all the time. The betrayal was painful, especially because she was always the one who crucified people who did this, and who started accusing me of having an affair the past year. I slowly got into a spot where I could manage, but 2 weeks ago, I confronted her with the fact that she had only shown remorse 2 times. That I felt as if I was fighting harder for this than her. That I felt as if I was the only one who had cheated and who was suffering, while she was being angry and defensive 24/7. She told me she felt it and that she would try, but 30 minutes later, she called me upstairs and told me it was over, that she loved me and the kids, but that her feelings were dead. Her trust was gone. I know the stress of being caught and having to hear that she has dysthymic depression is causing her to block her emotions, to go on the offense instead of admitting to what she did. But it feels as if she's making a decision while being in her darkest place, as remote from her true feelings as possible. She has agreed to go to couples counseling. We have our first session tomorrow, but I'm really looking for advice on how to handle her depression. And she has already stated that she wants it to work out with all her heart, but currently has no faith that it will help. She's dead inside. When talking to other people, she wants to let the whole world know what she did to crucify herself. She keeps stating that there are 2 sides to the story, and it's no excuse, but I felt so alone, thereby forgetting that I was just as alone as her in the relationship. And when I talk to other people about what happened, I'm mostly focusing on my mistakes, not hers. It feels as if she blames me for what she did, for what she became. I'm not the kind of person who likes to be on the wrong end of the stick, but I've quickly found out these past weeks that if I confront her or show too much anger, she withdraws and pushes me away or gets angry. I know she's not without feelings. During the time we spent apart would be crying, taking long walks and mentally unstable. She presents herself for what she did to me, and her children for the pain she caused us, and hates what she's become. So how on earth do I handle her depression and adultery? Show her that I love her and that I care, without being a burden or giving her the feeling that I'm pushing her. We've been living apart these past 2 weeks, and she keeps telling me that she does love me, but that the spark is gone. But she wants it to return. But in the meantime, she can't be around me. How do I cope with her aggression and defensiveness without losing myself? How do I show her that I'm not the man that I became? How do I make her understand that the burden of not being good enough, or my wife wouldn't have preferred death, was slowly eroding me? Update. So we had our first couples therapy a few hours ago, and it was an eye-opener. Yes, she is depressed and has severe issues. And no, that does not excuse her behavior. She told the 2 therapists and me bluntly that she lied to me when she had sex with me the past few weeks. She told me repeatedly that she would never be intimate against her will. But during that session, She told us that she felt obliged to do it because of her mistake. Hearing that she lied about something as primal as this, even though I asked her and never forced her, angered me tremendously. Yes, she feels shame but not guilt. It's all focused on her own pain and sorrow. And the fact that everyone who knows about this judges her, the other parents at school, her parents, mine, and our friends. The shame triggers her depression, and in turn, that triggers her anger. She's just spouting her own rationale for having an affair, a story that she's practiced for over a year in her own mind, and usually in an angry state of mind. And that's something that should and will stop. During the session, she was confronted several times by the therapists on why she was so angry, on why her pain and regret focused on the literally small things that were wrong in our marriage, instead of the things she did wrong in the same marriage. I'll wait until the next session before confronting her with anger at her total lack of respect for me and our kids, because I reckon that things like that can be best discussed with a therapist in the room and not one-on-one. If I confront her myself, I'll only cause her to dig herself in and lock the doors. If there's a neutral party present, she won't have that chance. Yes, I still think there's a chance that we can save this. And that's still what I want. But there has to be respect from both sides. I'm not someone to pick a fight with the mother of my children, the woman I still love. But she has to understand that if she walks, it's the end. She does not get to decide if we remain friends. She does not get to decide if and how I heal myself. If she walks out of this, she loses me. I'll remain civil for the kids, take care of the finances, and scrub her out of my life. There will be no bond between us, and I'll use every part of my energy to rebuild my life and be there for the kids. She doesn't get to decide if she'll be a factor in it. I do. OP, I'm really sorry about what you're going through. For the past 6 years, you've exhausted yourself trying to fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed and isn't responding to your efforts at all. You are bearing all the emotional weight of your relationship. I know that she has depression and clearly has some deep mental health issues. But depression doesn't cause someone to treat their partner badly or cheat on them. Every single act of disrespect and unkindness is a choice that she makes. If staying is what you want, at least take care and look after yourself more. Get in tune with how much this whole thing is affecting you and be a better version of yourself. So, if she finally decided to move on regardless, you would know you've tried your very best. I wish you all the best with your situation. OP. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I stayed here in Georgia. When we were in high school, I heard rumors that she was kind of promiscuous, but I rarely saw her with anybody before we dated. And she wasn't one of these teenage girls who had a child. So as time goes on, I graduate high school, go to real estate school, and became a real estate agent. But I didn't pursue that career. I ended up becoming a real estate appraiser. One day I was out in the field. I get a text from an unknown number and it said, "Hey stranger. How are you?" I responded, "Who is this?" She said, "It's me, Kate." I was surprised and happy to hear from her. So I immediately called her and asked her how she was and what she was up to. She tells me she got a job offer from T-Mobile back here at home, and she decided to take it. And she was moving back from California within a week. Fast forward a week and Kate has moved back here to Georgia. And within a week we start hanging out together. I help her get situated in her new apartment, help her move furniture, etc. So, as time goes on, we are spending a lot of time together going on trips. When we were both off from work, after dating Kate officially for just over a year, I asked Kate to marry me and she happily accepted. One of the conversations we had was about having kids. Kate couldn't have any kids. She was plagued with infertility issues. I didn't have any kids, and the women I dated before Kate, I always made sure I wore protection. We got married, and we were married for the better part of 17 years. It was fantastic. We hardly ever had any arguments and our sex life was good. We didn't go at it like rabbits every night, but it was consistent. I would say Kate was in wonderful shape. She always went to the gym. I started working out with her, but I wasn't as consistent as Kate was. She looked amazing. She was in her early 40s when things started to change. Kate started staying at the gym longer after work, but when I called her, she always answered the phone, so I had no reason to suspect anything. This went on for about 4 months before I confronted her and asked her if there was anything going on I should know about. She told me nothing was going on. She told me she added new exercises and added them to her routine, which made her gym session a little longer than normal. After that discussion, I didn't bring it up anymore, but little did I know that Kate was being unfaithful to me, but I just didn't know it yet. A few more months passed and our sex life began to take a nosedive, but I thought it was just because we were both getting older and our bodies were slowing down. One day I was at work and an old friend called me, and we made plans to have lunch that day. We started talking about old times, all the women we used to date. Then my wife's name came out of his mouth. I didn't tell him I was married to Kate. He begins to tell me about that rumor I heard in high school about how promiscuous she was, and I interrupted him and said, "Do you really believe all the stuff everybody says?" Well, he begins to tell me that there was a video of her with two guys. I said, "What, she was in a threesome?" And he says, "Yes. And apparently she was even promiscuous in college." After he said that, I laughed it off and told him, "Man, stop with this nonsense." And I told him I didn't believe him. After having lunch with my old friend, I couldn't help but think, did I make a mistake marrying Kate? After all, that was many, many years ago. When I got back to work, I really tried to not think about what my friend said. It was on my mind nonstop. So, after work, I went home with all this on my mind. And to my surprise, my wife was home sitting on the couch watching TV. We started chatting about our work days. And then I changed the subject and said, "An old friend called me today while I was at lunch. We chatted a bit and we got on the subject of old girlfriends. We used to date and some of the rumors we heard." To my surprise, Kate didn't really want to chat about that. She said she didn't really want to talk about her old boyfriends. After all, it was eons ago. I agreed, but at the same time started to make me wonder after her response. So, the next day I had an extended lunch break and I wanted to go see Kate and surprise her with some lunch. When I got to her job, I was met by one of her female coworkers who looked surprised to see me. She begins to tell me that she was off and wasn't scheduled to come back to work until the following morning. I was shocked. Kate left the house for work in her T-Mobile uniform. What was she up to? At this point, I had suspicions that my wife was doing something she didn't want me to know about. My heart was beating a little fast and the thought crossed my mind that maybe she was cheating on me, but I told my brain to be quiet. So, I drove around for a while and eventually ended up at the gym. Kate used to go to after work every day. I drove around the parking lot, but I didn't see her car. So, I parked the car, walked in and glanced around, but didn't see Kate. As I started to leave, I got a call from Kate, saying she was at some type of training, but I knew she was lying because her coworker ratted her out. I simply said to her, "I will see you this evening," and hung up the phone. I didn't say I love you or anything. When I got home from work, Kate wasn't home yet, but she arrived shortly after, and we got into a heated discussion about her lying about her whereabouts. She tried to explain, but I just wasn't having it. So, I asked her if she was cheating on me. She said, "No, I am not cheating on you." And then I said, "Why did you lie to me then?" She says, "What are you talking about?" I said, "You were off today from work and you were not scheduled to go back to work until Monday. Why didn't you tell me that?" She calmly says, "Because I didn't think it was a big deal." I said, "Okay," and went into the home office to cool off. I walked right past her and she just stood there. The next day, I did some research on divorce laws in the state, Georgia, and called a couple of attorneys to see what divorce would have in store for me. I had a free phone consult with an attorney and I told him my suspicions. And he said, "The only way to know for sure is to get proof she is cheating." He said, "You can put a GPS tracker on a car, go through her phone." Then he said, "You might want to try a private investigator and they are not cheap." After the phone consult, I called around to a few private investigators and as luck would have it, I came across a retired homicide detective in the Atlanta area who was just starting his business. I made an appointment with him and basically told him, "I think my wife is cheating on me and I don't want to go through a phone or put a GPS tracker on a car." He said, "What about our phone records?" I told him I really didn't have time for that. He asked, "How does she make a living?" I said to him, "She is a cell phone rep for T-Mobile." Well, the private investigator only charged me $1,200. I thought that was a good deal compared to all the other private investigators I contacted. He said he wanted to be competitive with his prices in order to build up his clientele. I gave the private investigator her information, her vehicle, her work hours, her work address, some of the friends she hangs out with on occasion, and the gym she works out at. While all this is in motion, I contacted my bank just as a precaution and set up another account and started moving some money into it. Later that night, after driving home from work, I get a text from Kate saying she was going to be working late at the store. I didn't even respond because I felt she was lying to me, and she was. The private investigator sent me a video clip of her leaving T-Mobile, kind of dressed up in a way. That night, the private investigator followed her to a club where she met 4 people, 2 men and 2 women. They were at the club for about an hour. The private investigator was keeping me informed along the way. Then he says Kate came out of the club with these people. Kate got into her car and followed them to a house that was about 20 minutes from the club. The most amazing thing about this private investigator, he had a state-of-the-art drone. He informed me the house they went to was so close to another house that it really couldn't get close enough physically to get what he needed. The houses were in a new subdivision and didn't have a lot of street lights. He got close enough with his camera, but he had to use his drone for the rest of the footage. He said after sunset, it started to get dark. He got footage of them walking into this house. And then one of the guys put his hands on Kate's backside and she grabbed him and kissed him. As the private investigator told me, there were a few more people in the house as he could see through the window, but they all disappeared in the midst of a small crowd. So he positioned his drone to the back of the house, and that's where he caught the most heartbreaking scene. Kate was in this room nude with 2 other men. And you can imagine how I must have felt when I saw that. I sent a text to the private investigator and told him he didn't need to do any more surveillance. I had what I needed, but he said he would continue. He wanted to see what she would do after she left the house. He waited for just over an hour before Kate came out of the house. Then he followed Kate back to the gym. He said, it looked like she took a shower, changed back into her T-Mobile attire, and then followed her home. She got home around 9:30-ish. I pretended to be asleep as I had my back toward her. I didn't want her touching me. She had just got done having a threesome. The next morning, I couldn't wait to leave the house. We both got up together. But as soon as she jumped in the shower, I left without saying anything. I got to work and took a shower there. Kate sent me a text telling me to have a good day at work. I didn't respond to her text. I reached out to my private investigator and asked him to put the footage together and get it to me as soon as possible. At lunch, I told my boss I might be a little late coming back from lunch. He asked me if everything was okay. I simply said, my 17-year marriage just ended, and his mouth hit the floor. I almost got a speeding ticket driving to the attorney's office. As soon as I got there, I told him to go ahead and file for divorce on my behalf. I also told him I have proof of my wife's infidelity coming to him soon. When I got back to work, my boss told me to go ahead and take the rest of the day off, which was perfect for me. I knew Kate wouldn't be home, so I went home, packed a bag for about a week, and went to a hotel about 20 minutes from where we live. The financial stuff wasn't too bad. The only thing we had together was the house, which only had a small amount of equity in it. I didn't have any credit card debt, and she had a few credit cards which she paid on. Fast forward 4 days and Kate hasn't reached out to me at all. No texts, nothing. But people at my job and my friends have told me that she is telling people that I abandoned her and she is filing for divorce on those grounds. Another 2 weeks passed and she is served with divorce papers at her job. My friends have told me she hasn't said one word since she got the divorce papers. About a week before the hearing, I prepared a package with the footage of Kate in a threesome with those 2 men. I wanted to send this to everyone, but here in Georgia, that's a crime. But I politely left the tape to her car window on the driver's side. At the divorce hearing, it was a quiet win for me. She tried to get alimony, but my lawyer fought that and he showed the court the proof of my wife's infidelity. She didn't get a dime, but she will get some of the equity when we sell the house. After the hearing, her lawyer informed my lawyer that she was not going to stay in the house. She will be out in about 45 days. She was responsible for her own credit cards and she got to keep one of the 3 cars we own. About a month after the hearing, she moved out of the house and we sold it about 4 months later. She wanted to reconcile after the divorce, but I told her that will never happen and to never contact me again. She then said I was being a jerk. I just hung up on her. I am free now and dating a bunch of women in 2023. It's tough. Women my age, even in their 50s, are even harder to deal with. In my opinion, he didn't waste any time. The most horrible thing is she lied right to his face and told him she wasn't cheating on him. I think I would have gone the GPS tracking route, but in my opinion, that still does not prove infidelity, only proves she was somewhere she possibly wasn't supposed to be. I said this a long time ago, long-term marriages are not immune to infidelity, but at the beginning of the story, the red flag for me was not taking that rumor a tad bit more seriously. Rumors are just that, rumors. But when more than one person says